Hey, your viewers and viewers, my name is John Red Strategist and welcome back to Say Being Hunted. This is episode 450. So, I kind of bombed, didn't I, in the last episode? My hardcore playthrough ended almost as quickly as it had begun, in a manner of speaking. I basically had a bit of a moment. I was on another island. I ran into a thicket. Turns out there were lots of robots in there. I could hear them, but I couldn't really see them too well until I was practically right on top of them. So that was unfortunate. I got blasted to pieces, and that was the end of that. Who knows, though? Maybe I'll do another attempt at a hardcore playthrough sometime in the future. Then again, actually, thing is, as when I record this, it is now obviously mid-January and all that, and So Being Hunted Reinvented Edition is going to be coming out, I think, in February, I believe, is at least when Den of Thieves is aiming for, so who knows. Maybe by the time I eventually start thinking about hardcore playthroughs again, you never know, maybe I'll have ended up moving on to Say Being Hunted. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I'm starting to already ramble a little bit. So we're going to be having another little podcast-style video then for this episode, and possibly the next one as well, depending on how I feel. But that's fine and all that. My God, that is a lot of dead rats. Holy shit, that's a lot of dead rats in one doorway. I don't think I've ever seen that many dead rats in one door. Flipping heck. Quite a few of them, isn't it? And this house over here apparently has a big rodent problem. Let's get away from that. Alright, but yeah, so hope you guys out there are all doing well, and hope you're all not still face farming too hard after I ballsed up the playthrough in the end of the last episode. It's unfortunate, but you know what? It happens. People always say, and I've said this before, people always say, Red, you've played this for so long, you're pretty much an expert at this game by now. No, I really am not. I'm not a pro at this game at all. I really am not. Even I balls things up. I feel like you'd have to, beat a hardcore playthrough to be able to kind of call yourself an actual pro at this game. But that's the thing. Who knows? Maybe one day. Maybe I'll do it in So Being Hunted Reinvented when that comes out. Who knows? Because I'm sure that'll have options for maxing out robots and whatever else have you. I'm guessing. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, that's actually not really what I wanted to talk about in this episode. I had a little topic of conversation actually in mind. I was thinking about something because just this morning, just before I started work for the day, I was basically looking. I was just getting myself up to date on a few news stories on BBC News, and thing is, I kind of went a bit down that rabbit hole where, sometimes when you're on news websites, you're looking at sort of up-to-date stories, and sometimes, with certain media outlets, you'll find that on certain news stories, they sometimes then have links to other stories, including some which are older. I kind of went down that rabbit hole a bit, and I can't remember the exact process that I used, or that I followed, rather, in order to get to where I ultimately did. But essentially, I came across a story from 2019 about a dude who had been heavily criticised for basically... Okay, so a little bit of backstory. For anyone who doesn't really know, here in the UK, I think in County Derbyshire, I think it's located, there's this big reservoir. I think it's called Lady Bower Reservoir. And visually speaking, it's quite a distinct site. So at one end of it, it has like this huge, basically like a dam sort of thing, or like a like a dam that just holds back the water. But near this dam, you will see there's this big, very sort of distinct feature in the water. This like really big, what is basically like a giant plug hole. It's basically like a vertical shaft made out of brick or whatever it's made out of, in the middle of the water, just behind the dam. And basically, what it is, it's like an overflow control plug hole thing. And the idea being that if ever the reservoir becomes sort of like too full, or, the water level in it is getting really, really high, the idea basically is that the water will flow down this pipe, and it'll keep it at sort of like a consistent level so it doesn't overflow and start flooding over the edges and whatever else have you. So here's the thing though, right? This overflow pipe is really fucking big, and it's really wide. Like, the mouth of it is huge, and apparently it's about like 20 meters deep. It goes down for, and it like flows down into tunnel underneath, which then leads to like an iron grated outlet. I'm guessing at the base of the dam, so that then the water, excess water, can like flow out into the River Derwent. I'm assuming I pronounced that correctly. Who knows? But basically, so what the news story was, there'd been this dude in 2019 who basically scaled the walls at the edge of the reservoir and actually got onto the edge of the plug hole. And he was like part way down, as though he was like going into it, and he was like photographing himself. And he was like, "Oh my god!" And of course, naturally, he got a lot of criticism for it, both from the public and, of course, from the company that runs the reservoir, because there's, A, that's incredibly fucking dangerous, and B, it's also illegal because you're trespassing on company property. The law says, you can't do that, quite understandably. But the thing is, it got me thinking, and it got me feeling about sort of like basically the topic in question of anxiety inducers, because good lord, looking at that picture, just like you get that sort of sense of anxiety. I might see if I can find some pictures actually of Lady Bower Reservoir and the plug hole actually as I'm talking about this. Maybe like flash them up on the screen so you can actually see it. Don't tell me, looking at those pictures, that that's not an anxiety inducer. Because like fucking hell, you could not pay me. You couldn't pay me any amount of money. You could not do anything to force me to go anywhere near the edge of that fucking thing. The thing is, like, this story that I was talking about, that wasn't the only story about it, actually, that I read. So there was the dude, like I say, in 2019, who was spotted basically monkeying around on the edge of this giant plug hole. There was another one I saw, again, it was Lady Bower Reservoir, of two people in little angling boats who were, like, sailing really close to the edge of the plug hole. It's like, oh my god, why? Why are you doing that? But yes, it got me thinking, in general about the idea of things that induce anxiety. Because the thing is, if you watch a lot of major YouTubers here on YouTube, YouTubers on YouTube, where else would a YouTuber be? But you know what I mean. Certain YouTubers, have they do various challenges. So they have to have things like try not to laugh challenges, where they watch various funny videos, etc. But some of them also have try, not to get anxious challenges, where they see, people post like pictures and videos to them and say, does this give you anxiety? And I've watched a couple of those before, just out of general interest and curiosity. And yeah, something I've often noticed is that something which really does get my anxiety going sometimes is people fooling around in unsafe locations that are really high up. So basically anything to do with heights, I've noticed, often gets me feeling anxious. Even when there's not actually people in the shot, when it's just maybe like an edge or something, even if it's taken from a distance, I do sort of get that anxiety. It's funny that about heights, because I feel like that's something which I never really used to be anxious about when I was younger. I feel like that's something I've become more anxious about as I get older. I don't know why. It's not like a fear of heights or a phobia or anything like that. It's just that sense of anxiety when you see pictures taken at like certain angles where you realise, oh, that's high up. That's real high up. Like, of course, there's ones, for example, of like crazy fucking free runners and like people who do parkour where they're like really high up on buildings and they like somersault from one building to another. I just think, you've got no fucking safety equipment. If you miscalculate and fall down there, you are fucking dead. You're going to die. You're just going to go splat on the ground. You're going to turn into a human pizza, essentially. And I just think, no. It just gets me. It's just like, screw that. Like I say, you could not pay me any amount of money. You could not force me to do anything like that. And if that makes me boring, so be it. Because that's basically what the dude who I was talking about in the 2019 news story about the Lady Bower Reservoir plug hole basically was saying in his defence, oh, it's my life, I'll live it as I see fit. Everyone else can just live their boring lives and all that. It's basically what he said, kind of. Something along those lines. I may be paraphrasing a bit. But, yeah, so you know what? You want to live that life, go ahead. But the thing is, Lady Bower Reservoir is not the only reservoir in the world that probably has like a plug hole like that. You'll find examples of that probably all over the world, I would imagine. And yes, the thing is, like, if you go on certain Reddit threads of like anxiety-inducing things like that, I would imagine there's probably their fair share of reservoir plug holes, because they're probably on there. Because the thing is, like, if you've ever watched my playthrough of Inside, which I did a while back, I think last year actually, I did it, didn't I? Basically, I actually had an episode there where I was talking about, what was it called? Submechanophobia. The idea of like the phobia of, or the fear or the anxiety sort of induced by submerged man-made structures. And I'll be honest, sometimes I do feel like I get a touch of that sometimes, though I always notice that it's in certain situations. For some reason, pictures of, for example, like shipwrecks in the ocean, things like that, or, for example, like the leg supports of, say, like oil rigs out at sea, they don't really give me any kind of anxiety or anything like that. And I think probably the reason why that is because it's the open ocean. And the thing is, the sea, the ocean is, well, there's a lot of space, basically. So imagine if you were swimming out there and you saw that. With how big the ocean and the sea actually is, you know, you would have no reason to swim anywhere near that. You could easily swim round it and give it quite a wide berth. But what often gets me with submechanophobia is actually submerged structures and man-made objects in things like rivers, canals, stuff like that. Because in that instance, that's a much more confined body of water. And so if you imagine that you were swimming through that, you would not have as much space to like go around it and to get, you know, to keep plenty of distance between yourself and it, if that makes sense. Or if not rivers and canals, usually it's things like pools of water on like industrial sites, so like sewage treatment plants and things like that, where not only is it like a very cramped, confined pool of water, it's also like a pool of water that's A, quite murky, so you can't see the bottom of it, and B, it's also got like machinery in it, moving about and things like that. Now that's an anxiety inducer. In fact, if you remember my Inside playthrough, episode 4, I think it was, the submechanophobia one, I used actually a clip from James Bond: A View to a Kill, Roger Moore's last film in the late 80s, whenever it was it came out. Yeah, because that's a fucking... was it late 80s of View to Kill? No, it was probably mid 80s actually, now that I think about it. But yeah, that's fucking the idea of dark, murky water. I mean, granted, that's not in a river, that's actually on a coastline, but essentially it's like a claustrophobic, dark, flooded space with machinery in it that could like grind and chew you up. So yeah, anxiety inducer, ladies and gentlemen. It's nicht gut, ja. There we are. But I just had to talk about this topic, basically. Oh god. There's a lot of crazy people out there, you know, returning to the topic of obviously people doing stupid things, life-threatening things and things like that. There's a lot of people out there who really do some quite dangerous stuff. Another one I remember actually once seeing, now think about it, was like a photograph. I think it was taken in Brazil, possibly somewhere on the edge of Rio. Because the thing is, like, if you look at pictures of Rio de Janeiro, obviously it's got big hills and quite steep, craggy slopes around it. And I'm pretty sure there was a picture I once saw. It was like somebody had taken a picture of this girl. I think either like a teenage girl or maybe, I don't know, young woman, early 20s, I'd say, if I had to estimate the age. And she was like really quite far down. Basically, there was like an overhanging rock on the edge of what was basically a cliff. And it was sort of sloping downwards. And this girl was like, I guess she was doing it as like a dare or something, I don't know, was like almost right at the edge of this rock, and that was just such an anxiety inducer because like, oh my god, what if you fucking slip and fall? I just think, ugh, no, stop that, just don't do it, don't do that at all, good lord. So yeah, there you go, you had a window into things that induce Red's anxiety, ladies and gentlemen. What am I doing? This way, let's go over towards that church. So, you know, that would actually be a good topic of conversation for anyone who wants to take me up on that. What are some anxiety inducers on your end, ladies and gents? What are things that you've seen, pictures that you've seen, videos that you've seen, or just things that you've thought of, which, when you think about them, you just think to yourself, screw that, no thank you. That just makes me feel really, really uncomfortable. And I'm sure people have something that they probably find does that to them. Alright, let me just stick that there. Oh, no you don't. Get out of it. Okay. Just going to see if I can get this device piece over here whilst I can. Oh boy. I'm trying to think of, any other anxiety-inducing things that I know of, that I've identified in my life. I can't think of any off the top of my head. I think, like I say, heights is the big thing for me these days, or just people, in high-up locations just farting around and doing really stupid shit. So yes, I'm sure that's a pretty universal one though, in all likelihood. The heights one. It's not an uncommon one, I would imagine. There we go, got it. Expertly done there, Red. Let me just check the church door as well. Okay. Do you know, actually, now that I think about it, actually there is one. And again, this is one that I find it's really become prominent as I've got older. So it kind of actually, I'd say, relates to the heights thing. It's sometimes, has anyone ever had this? I mean, yeah, of course people will have had this, now that I think about it, it's a stupid question. But I remember actually, a couple of years ago, this was after I'd moved down south, me and my old folks, when they once came down to visit, we went to a place called West Kennet Longbarrow, which is, for anyone who doesn't know what it is, it's basically, the Longbarrows are these kind of like old burial sites. I can't remember if they were like Iron Age burial sites or whatever they were, or when exactly they dated from, but they're pretty old. They're ancient, basically. And West Kennet Longbarrow, so this particular burial site is on top of a sort of, it's on top of a small hill. And the thing is, this hill is quite open. There's no like woods on top of it or anything like that. There's basically nothing on there. And I don't know why, but when I was sort of like stood on top of it, I had this like weird sense of, not fear or nervousness, not that, just a sense of like being slightly unsettled, as though, because when I sort of like looked up into the sky on top of this hill, because it's like such an open space, it sort of like made me start to feel very small. It's not like it's not as far as like agoraphobia, which is like the fear of big open spaces, assuming I've got the right phobia there, the right term for the phobia rather, that is. But it's just that sense of, being very small. And for some reason it's like, imagine if suddenly, when you're stood up there on that hill, in just that open space with nothing around you, imagine if suddenly gravity cancelled out and you started floating upwards. What would you grab onto to hold yourself down? I don't know why I started thinking about this, but for just a split moment, for some reason, this really intrusive thought came into my head. It was like, oh god, yeah, that's a bit unsettling. What the hell? So I guess you could class that as being a bit of an anxiety inducer. But it's not something that I've had very often, though, that one. I just wonder if maybe that was, I don't know, like an intrusive thought under very particular circumstances. So yeah, I'll leave you with that little thought, ladies and gentlemen. So we've been running for a good amount of time now. I think that'll do for a podcast-style episode. So hope you enjoyed that, and I hope I haven't triggered any anxieties in you folks. Join in the conversation if you want to. Let me know what you find to be an anxiety inducer. But other than that, Facebook and Twitter links down below, along with the link to my propagandist channel, for anyone interested. And I'm going to wrap up here before that dog comes across me. So, goodbye, everybody. Oh, this is what I wanted to get to. Okay. Welcome to Castleton, please drive carefully. Holy shit, what's happened over there? Is that a fucking... Oh, I reckon I know what that is. That's probably an alien capsule. I mean, surprising how little damage is done to the surrounding area. It's just come down in the middle of the street. There's another one over on that side. What do we got? Hope Valley, the Hilltop Free House. We've got a little telephone booth over here. Oh man, you see, this just makes me want to scratch that exploration itch. Visitor information. Welcome to Castleton. We can't really read, that's too small. See, they've got the police diversion signs. Yeah. Oh, Jesus.